Ready. Got it.
Hi, everybody.
Hello. Welcome to our online snake encounter. It's so lovely to have you all here. We hope you're all doing well. We first like to introduce ourselves. My name is Laura. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a public programs presenter at the Academy. You may recognize me or even some of my fellow presenters. We do the public engagements on the floor, like the penguin feeding, the coral reef dive, and of course, the snake encounter. So hope to see you all soon. And this is my fellow presenter, Josh.
Hi, everybody.
Proper introduction.
So my name's Josh. I use he, him. I'm on loan from the planetarium, but once upon a time, I used to help out public programs with their on-floor programming, and it's an awesome chance to get to return and do some animal interaction, which is one of the coolest parts of the public programs roster. Mm-hmm. So we're going to be talking today about snakes. What are you excited about, Laura, for snakes?
Oh, I'm always excited about snakes because they're one of my very favorite animals. And of course, the reason why we're doing this and why both of us are doing this is because we have pet snakes. So we're very excited. You're going to meet our pet snakes today. They are a little bit different than our ambassador animals that you often see on the public floor with us during our normal snake encounter programs. Those animals are education animals that we take care of at the Academy, but our pet snakes are still very excited to meet you and to teach you more about their wonderful species and why they're very important to the ecosystems in which they can be found. So speaking of which, we are going to be talking about the adaptations that snakes have. I guess we can define what an adaptation is. What would you say an adaptation is, Josh?
An adaptation seems like something that makes you maybe more successful in doing what you do or in the place where you live. Would that be a good definition?
Yeah, I would definitely say so. So snakes have adaptations that allow them to be successful in the sense of finding their prey. They're very good predators. And by being good predators, they help to keep the balance of the ecosystems in which they can be found. And they can be found pretty much all over the world in many different types of habitats. Say a desert or a rainforest, even a park like Golden Gate Park. If you've come to visit us at our building, you can find snakes all over the world, except for maybe perhaps Antarctica. There's none over there. It's very, very cold for them. Difficult for them to stay nice and warm.
Hard to imagine a snake wandering around happily in the snow, for sure.
Yeah, that would be interesting to see, though. Maybe one day, you never know. But snakes have these wonderful adaptations that help them in whatever environment they live. And we are going to talk more about what these adaptations are, show you with our snakes, and have a little discussion about it so we can see how they have evolved over time to be very successful. So first and foremost, Josh, because we are talking about adaptations that help snakes to be successful predators. Predators are animals that have to find their food and eat another animal, right? So what kind of food is a snake eating?
Well, my snake generally would eat rats. I imagine that's got to be pretty close to what he would be eating in the wild as well, although I don't think they come frozen from a store in the wild.
Why not?
But I'd imagine that big snakes have to eat bigger animals, so maybe the larger part of the rat or rodent spectrum. Smaller snakes probably wouldn't do so well against a really big rat. They might seek out smaller prey.
Yes, definitely. Most snakes will go for the rodent population, whether it be mice, rats, voles, to name a few. And other snakes can be more specialized in eating birds, maybe some amphibians, and even other snakes, depending on what species we're talking about.
Wow.
Yeah, and there's a lot of different species in the world. There's about 3,000 different types of snakes, and we'll be introducing you to just 2 of them. So don't be overwhelmed. Not 3,000.
I don't think I have room in my house for 1,000 snakes.
That was very fun, though. I mean, you can't have a snake house, right? But do you think we should just go for it and bring out our snake?
Yeah. I'll be right back with my guy.
All right. So Josh is going to get our first snake out. His snake is a ball python. And some of you may be familiar with this animal. It's a very common pet snake because they're pretty docile, very well-mannered, and easily cared for if you were to want to have a pet snake. And ball pythons are called ball pythons because they have a unique adaptation to help protect themselves, a defense mechanism. They will coil up into a ball, B-A-L-L, right, if they feel threatened, and they will stick their head in the middle to keep their head, the most vital part of their body, nice and protected. Ball pythons are found in sub-Saharan Africa, Western and Central Africa. And there is our friend right there. Would you like to introduce to us properly?
So this is my ball python. He's about 4.5 feet long, and this is the most exciting part of his day, so he's going a little crazy. But when you are checking out a snake like this, he's a constrictor. You can tell a little bit about the way he gets his prey by the shape of his head. But one really cool thing about how he's going to be adapted to find prey is right there on the very front. You can see sort of like a pink mustache right there. Those are his sensing pits. Now, that's called the Jacobson's organ, if I recall correctly. But no, excuse me, those are the scenting parts. This guy uses those to see infrared. So if he's looking for his prey, maybe a rat in a termite mound, then he would be seeking out basically the heat they leave behind. Now that's a super cool adaptation. If you imagine a snake looking for a mouse in a dark environment, the mouse has dark fur, there's not a lot of light, it's going to be really tough to locate. But a warm mouse body moving around on cold dirt or just a ground surface will actually leave a little bit of heat behind. So almost like some kind of magic power, they can see where the mouse was, where it's going towards, and keep track of it even when the mouse is doing its best to hide.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive.
This is a great adaptation for living underground where there's going to be very limited access to light. Now, they can also smell. They have a very great sense of smell. You can see he's eagerly exploring. You can check out his cute little forked tongue right there. I might be moving out of the camera's focus. There we go. So with that, it's kind of weird to think about smelling with your tongue, but that's pretty much what he's doing. That forked tongue gives you a lot of surface area. He can bring any chemicals he comes across in his environment back into his mouth and figure out exactly where, bidirectionally, sort of either to the left or to the right, a smell is coming from. I can't smell direction, so that's kind of an amazing superpower to have.
Yeah.
Okay, so when we talk about this guy living underground, though, there's always something that struck me as a little tough. If I wanted to get underground, I would have to dig a hole. How does a snake get underground?
We actually have a good visual for that while I get out my snake, our second snake. So the video that's loading right now, you can see a snake digging a hole in the ground using its head. So while they don't have any limbs, they're still pretty efficient at it. Do you think you could dig a hole underground just using your head, Josh?
I've never attempted to dig a hole using my face, but I can't imagine I'd be as good at it as this guy is. That's some pretty impressive digging right there. Even pushing the dirt away with no limbs, that's astounding.
Yeah. And because snakes, as those successful predators, are finding a lot of animals for their prey, like rodents that typically live underground in burrows, it's very important that they're able to get underground, whether it's by digging or even utilizing their bodies that don't have any arms or legs, no limbs. As you can see right here, they're still really good at getting around, very efficient. They're basically one big muscular body, and they utilize these very special scales on the bottom called scutes. Let me get my snake a little bit closer that you can see, and it helps give them traction or grip to whatever surface they're going to be slithering or moving across, whether it's dirt or a rock or even up a tree if it's an arboreal snake or a snake that lives its life in the trees. Now, my snake right here is a little bit different than Josh's, one of the other 3,000 species. This is a corn snake, and they can actually be found here in North America, in the southeastern portions of the United States of America. And they're called corn snakes because they have a very unique pattern on their scutes, those bottom scales that look like native corn or maize. So you can kind of see it right here. It's a little bit more difficult with my particular corn snake because he's a slightly different coloration. Most corn snakes are a little bit darker, browner, and that pattern would be more noticeable on them. But they have adapted this limblessness. They're getting very excited. This is good. They're very
They want to see everybody.
Yes, see everybody and teach you all about their species. They're like, please learn more about us. But snakes have evolved over the last 120 million years. Their ancestors actually had arms and legs, but since they were getting down into those very close confined spaces, those burrows of rodents, the ones that had smaller arms and legs were able to get down there more easily and were ultimately more successful. So over time, those that had smaller limbs were able to survive, and eventually they lost them completely to the snake bodies that we are very familiar with today. So using their senses, limbless bodies, they're able to locate potential prey, be able to get to its proper location. But now a snake has to be able to swallow its prey, right? It has to be able to capture it and it has to be able to eat it. So how do snakes go about doing so?
Well, it's always kind of amazing to me when I look at my snake's head. You can see him right about there. It's about the same size as my thumb. That's not that big a head, but I've seen him eat rats that are much bigger than my thumb. I can't eat something bigger than my head, so it's a little amazing that he can down something so readily that's comparatively so big. They've got to have something really cool about their jaw. It actually kind of opens up to allow for them to eat an even bigger bite than their mouth would normally allow.
Yeah, so I invite all of you who are listening and watching in right now to feel your own jaw. You can feel how it connects to the rest of your head right underneath your ear, and even feel your chin right in the front. You can tell that it's one big solid bone. Snakes, on the other hand, have two parts to their lower jaw, or their mandible, and they're connected by ligaments, basically stretchy tissue, kind of like a rubber band, and allows a snake not only to open its jaw down, but also side to side. And because of that, they are able to swallow something whole that is about 3 times the size of their head. As a comparison, that'd be like you as a human trying to eat an entire watermelon without cutting it up. Very difficult. I do not recommend trying it at home, but it's pretty impressive, I believe. And because of their ability to move their jaw down and to the side, they have individual movement on both sides of their jaw. So they can essentially walk their food into their mouth. As you saw from that little graphic, their teeth point backwards. So that's the jaw of a snake. The teeth go back like this. And when they use one side to grip onto whatever they're trying to swallow, it hooks onto it and makes sure it goes in the proper direction down their throat so they're able to digest it. So all these adaptations together, I would say they're pretty successful predators.
Indeed. For there to be that many different kinds of snakes spread across so much area, they must be really good at what they do.
Yeah. Woo. See, very wiggly. So there's some snake wrangling in our jobs, which I really like. This is a good part of our jobs, I would say.
Kind of an interesting thing, though. Your guy's obviously a lot quicker than my guy, and just in terms of the amount of movement he's doing. So is there a different kind of strategy for a small, fast snake versus a bigger snake to get their prey?
Yes, they can have different strategies, most definitely, depending on their own size and what they're going to be trying to swallow or trying to hunt down and predate on. It can determine their feeding strategy, or yes, their feeding strategy. I was like, that's the proper terminology. Most snakes are what we call constrictors, which is what both of these snakes are. They will grab onto their prey and coil around it and slowly squeeze so that they can incapacitate it. They will basically have the prey slowly lose consciousness because they're cutting off their air supply. Oh, excuse me, not cutting off their air supply. That's the misconception. They're actually squeezing so tightly that they're cutting off the blood circulation within the animal that they're trying to eat. So it's kind of like a sleeper hold. If anyone is a wrestling fan, kind of getting them into that sleeper hold, help them lose that consciousness, that is what that snake is going to be doing. And depending on what they're trying to eat, if, say, it's a larger rat, like a ball python would be eating, they might squeeze for a little bit longer. Or if it's a very agile prey, maybe a vole or a small mouse, maybe a little bit quicker. A smaller snake like a corn snake that will be trying to eat those types of rodents might be a little bit quicker. There are also some snakes that are venomous that will utilize venom, a toxin that they make themselves, and they inject it into the body of whatever animal they're trying to eat with special fangs. Other snakes are what we call grab and go. They are just as quick as possible. So if you were to be eating an amphibian like a frog or a toad, or maybe even a fish that tends to be pretty slippery, you want to try to get a good grip on it as fast as possible and swallow it before the animal even knows what's happening. So
That's
many different
strategies. Now, when we talk about these snakes, we're pretty close to these guys. We're not doing a very good job social distancing. If you saw a snake out in the wild, would you want to pick it up just like this?
Oh, definitely not. We want to make sure that our snakes in their natural habitats are doing their jobs, right? They want to be able to find their prey, be successful, and the only surefire way to do that is to make sure that they're protected. And to do that, we want to make sure we give them their distance. So if you were to go out on a hike or maybe go visit a park and you do see a snake, you want to keep your distance as much as possible, appreciate it from afar, maybe tell it, thank you for doing your job. I appreciate all that you're doing to help make sure that the ecosystem that you live in is in balance, but leave it be. You can take a picture of it. You will want to try to take a picture with no flash. Snakes actually have no movable eyelids, so they can't blink, can't protect themselves from those flashes of light. And you can also put that picture that you take up onto a citizen science app like iNaturalist, which we run here at the Academy. And that helps researching scientists, not only from our museum, but all across the globe, to figure out what kinds of life is out there, whether it's a snake or maybe a plant or an insect. And that helps them get a better idea of what is out there, how much of it is out there, and where it's located. Since we're all linked together, right? We're linked to one another, our natural world, and the impacts of our human interactions with our ecosystems can ripple across the globe, right? One thing that we do can help affect many different things. And recent events have even shown us that unprecedented challenges can be met with unprecedented change. But that's when we work together toward a common goal. And our mission here at the Academy is to explore, sustain, and explore, explain, and sustain life on Earth. And the way that we're doing that is by learning more about the world around us. And you being here for this program, you're helping us in that mission. So thank you so much for being here. We're going to move toward that common goal, make a sustainable future. And one way to do that is to make sure these snakes have that opportunity to use those adaptations.
So thank you from us, thank you from the snakes, and thank you for tuning in. It really is great to have a chance to engage with the public, even when we're all sheltering in place.
Yeah.
We had a question pop up in our live chat about snakes having vestigial limb bones. Do they have any genes for limbs? Now, I spend a lot of time at the Academy going to get coffee at our cafe, and we walk underneath that whale skeleton that has those little tiny leg bones in the back of its tail. Do snakes have anything similar?
Some snakes do. I'm not entirely sure on the whole genetic aspect of it. Admittedly, I'm not too well versed in the technicalities of it, but there are some snakes that have these little vestigial points where their cloaca is. I've often seen them in even our own ambassador ball pythons at the Academy. So the cloaca is the opening toward the bottom of the snake, right where the body meets the tail. It's a little bit hard to see just by looking at a snake because you're like, wait, where does the tail begin? But the cloaca is the universal hole. They go to the bathroom through it, they defecate, they reproduce through that hole. And some snakes, you will see these two little, they almost look like little spikes that come out from the side. And those are vestigial or no longer useful parts of what used to be their limbs. But I'm not sure what the percentage of snakes would have that.
Now, Isosceles is kind of an old man, so I can show you on him. You might be able to see his spurs. I can't point because he's got my other hand locked up. But right on the side, right there, you should be able to see some little bony protrusions. Those are his spurs on the side of his cloaca.
Yeah. So while they don't have hip bones like a whale does, they still have a little bit left over, some of them, of the limbs that they used to have millions of years ago.
So we had a question from Christina about, does the Academy have snake skulls? We had a whole skull exhibit with a bunch of them, and I think there's even some digital ones you can check out. If you log on, I think we can drop a URL in our chat. It is a super cool way for you to explore some of these skulls the Academy has in collections, and it's a lot more than just this green anaconda skull. There are thousands and thousands of Academy objects that you can peruse and explore from your own home. You don't need to be at the Academy to check out some of our amazing collections.
Yeah, and we have everything from snakes to, oh, I can't even think of another animal, a bird. I'm too focused on snakes.
There's some sheep I've seen.
Mm-hmm.
There's a really crazy toucan, but I guess that falls under the bird category.
Yeah, and having those collections, those bones, whether they be skulls or even entire skeletons, helps us to have a library of life so we can understand how there have been changes to animals or plants or insects over time, or even how their environment has affected them. So it helps us get a good idea of what's going on in the world and doing comparisons as well. All right. See, we got any other questions?
I saw a question pop up. Is it a fact that snakes have poor eyesight? I can tell you this guy has missed trying to grab a dead rat from 6 inches in front of him. So I'm not saying he's got fantastic eyesight, but I think that might be most ball pythons. You have so many other awesome senses that their eyesight isn't the best. But I don't think that's true of all snakes. I think there are some snakes out there that must have pretty good eyesight.
Yeah, I believe some of them do. I guess it depends on what you would qualify as poor eyesight. Again, I don't know where like the line would be drawn of where that would be the distinction. But it's just that their eyes are not the only sense that they rely on in order to navigate their environment or even find their prey. So some of them do have decent eyesight, I would say, but I'm not sure, like in comparison to, say, maybe like a hawk. Definitely not like that.
But I'm wearing glasses too, so I'm not one to talk. So another question came in about, does their color and pattern affect their need for warmth from the sun? I would say on just a physical level, it would affect how quickly they absorb it. My guy's got pretty dark skin, so that means he's going to absorb a little bit more energy because less sunlight is bounced off. But is that universally true, Laura?
Yes, I believe so. It can definitely help make sure that their basking time can be cut down. So since they are ectothermic or they are cold-blooded, they don't make their own body heat, they definitely need to either find a warmer spot or go directly into sunlight in order to make sure that their body temperature is at the proper temperature itself so that it can function well. So their metabolism is going to be at the rate that they need it to be, whether for digestion or whatnot. So it can definitely help. Coloration will also help them to camouflage. So if you have, say, a ball python right there, be slithering through the underbrush of the African continent, a little bit harder to see. My snake is, as I mentioned before, a little bit different than your average corn snake. He has some albinism, so they're not typically this orange coloration. You can see his eyes are red too. Oh, no, he's like, no, don't show me. There we go.
Definitely camera shy.
Yeah, he would not do very well in direct sunlight for a long period of time because it would actually be harmful to him for extended periods because he doesn't have as much natural protection from UV light that a normal snake would. But it may take him a little bit longer to heat up as well. So he would need a warming pad or a heated rock that would be more beneficial.
Speaking of someone at the Academy who has albinism and is a big fan of a heated rock, Claude has some issues around eyesight. Does your snake have any challenges that might be related to vision?
I don't know about him in particular since he's not fully, doesn't fully have albinism. He's not completely white like Claude is. But when I go to the vet, they say he's looking pretty good. But Claude, for instance, if you were to talk about an animal that does have albinism, his eyes are affected because since the albinism that he does have prevents him from making melanin or a pigmentation in your body that we as humans make as well. It gives coloration to our skin, our hair, and the iris of our eyes, so that ring of color. You were looking in the mirror, that ring of color right there. And it gives you that protection from direct sunlight. So it's kind of a built-in natural sunblock, if you will. And because Claude doesn't have that ring of color around his eye, he gets more damage from light to the back of his eye that prevents him from seeing quite as well. But I don't know about my particular snake.
He probably doesn't spend too much time cruising around the outdoors, I'm guessing.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, he's kind of has a good setup over here. He gets food presented to him on a regular basis. He doesn't have to go hunting for it. All right. Does anybody else have any more questions? Ooh.
If you have any, you can drop them in chat. So Laura, what is your favorite fact about snakes? What makes them a truly impressive animal to you?
Ooh, that's difficult. I think it's just simply for the fact that they are able to get around without any arms or legs, because it's just very impressive. If anyone does have the opportunity to safely touch a snake, when we're back in the building and we are given the opportunity to do so, invite you all to come on over. But they just truly have like all these muscles throughout their body, and they're able to climb over numerous surfaces, even depending on what type of snake they are. They have different ways of slithering or moving. Some of them can inch along like a worm. Some of them have more of that kind of serpentine slithering pattern that we're very familiar with. Others have what is called sidewinding, which snakes in the desert will use, because since sand can like fall out from underneath you, they have to move very quickly. Oops, sorry to startle you. And very efficiently, not touching the sand as much as possible, so that they can actually get to one place to another without just completely sinking into the substrate.
Or so else it'd be like running on a treadmill. You just kind of stay in place.
Exactly. You're like trying your best. That's also why snakes don't typically move very well over glass. There's not anything to really grip onto. They're kind of just slithering like this.
We had another question pop up that snakes are often interpreted as slimy. And I can tell you right now, isosceles is not slimy. How about your guy?
No, definitely not. Yeah, they look like they would be, since they're pretty shiny. Might be a little bit harder to see on this camera if I get the right lighting. But that's just the nature of their scales. They have those scales all the way from their nose down to their tail right there. And it helps just protect them and also help them get around with those on the bottom. But it also is dependent on the snake too. Some of them have smoother scales, like our two snakes, the corn snake and the ball python. Other snakes, like a rattlesnake, which is the only venomous snake here in California, have what are called keeled scales. So they have a small ridge in the middle of each of their scales on the top and the sides of their body that give them more texture, and that helps to camouflage them into their rocky environment. So they definitely don't look quite as slimy as, say, these ones, but they definitely don't have any type of slime or mucus on their body. They're pretty
You mentioned venomous snakes. Would you be holding your corn snake if it were venomous?
No, I don't. All snakes, venomous snakes in particular, they only utilize, or they want to only utilize their venom to capture their prey, since it takes a lot of energy in order to produce it. They want to make sure it goes to its proper use. They want to get their meal. But they will usually warn you either with coloration, or in this case of the rattlesnake, by using a type of movement and sound to warn you away that you're maybe a little too close for comfort, so that they don't have to use their venom as a defense mechanism. But any type of snake you handle, you just want to be very gentle and very conscious of like where you hold them. We don't want to accidentally startle them by grabbing them on their head. But venomous snakes are usually not the best to have as pets because you don't want that added stuff to be aware of. But
now,
nice
someone else has asked, does a snake really lose all of their skin? And I think that makes a fantastic last question.
Yes, it does. So I do actually have another specimen. I'm actually going to see if I can juggle right here. Snakes do lose their skin. Depending on what time of their life it will be, it can happen more frequently. When they're still growing as they're juveniles in the first few years of their life, they can lose their skin and shed their skin every month or so as they're getting larger. But snakes will do it periodically throughout the year in order to replenish their scales, because sometimes they get a little roughed up just by being out in their environment. And they will separate the old scales from the new one that they're going to be growing and slowly start to peel it off, starting with their nose. And it goes all the way down to their tail, and it will come off inside out. So this is actually the shed of my snake. I can hold it up right here. This is what it looks like. Ooh, get it to focus a little bit. There we go.
It feels like crunchy wax paper.
Yeah. It starts off pretty moist when it comes off. Like it's pretty wet at first, but then once it dries out, it is, you can kind of hear it. Get on the microphone there. It's a little bit crinkly, but they will shed a layer off of all their scales, including their eye. So I mentioned before that snakes don't have any movable eyelids, and that's because they have a very specialized scale over their eye itself, and they will shed that as well. Actually do have a piece of the head here, so you can see the eyes. Yeah.
Little googly eyes.
Yeah, they sometimes can get scratched, and just like the rest of their scales, they want to make sure that it is going to be working for them, protecting them, making sure they're able to see, especially if you are going to be putting your face into a meal. You want to make sure you're able to see and your eyes are protected. All right.
That's great. Thank you all for the questions. Those are some excellent ones, but I think we're running a little long on time.
Yeah. But if you do have any other questions, feel free to find us when we're back in the building, and we'll be more than happy to answer any and all questions that you have about snakes. But yes, thank you so much for joining us. We greatly appreciate you coming to learn more about this incredible animal, and we hope to see you again soon. If you are interested in any more programs, we have a lot of different things going on. We have some talks from our very own scientists that come on periodically. And we also have some upcoming public programs coming up. Sorry, he's like, it's the end of the program. We gotta, I'm done. So if you're interested in puppet shows or story times, then keep your eye out for that, and we'll be excited to see you there as well. But thank you all so much for joining us. You can say goodbye to our snakes. Goodbye.
They would wave if they could, but have a great rest of your day.
Goodbye, everyone.